nation's capital. Now let's take a look at what our newspapers are saying today, and as usual we're going to start with the Daily Trust newspaper. It has a lead story still on the Niger crisis. It says Niger coupist adamant as deadline ends, and the first writer says civilians join security forces for surveillance. Nice. We have Niger troops deny Nigerian soldiers access to Boso, tight security in Jibia, Ilela, Mega Tagari borders. Tinubu meets Sokoto, Kebbi, Katsina, Jigawa, Yobe governors. And we also have ECOWAS mum over next line of action. Beneath that, we have female soldier kills captain in Adamawa. Indian-bound couple excretes 184 wraps of cocaine. Man discovers his wife of 15 years had 2 husbands for 7 years. That's a bit serious. 141 local governments at high risk of diphtheria. This is according to the federal government. And if you want details of that, it's on page 10. We also have federal government pay 36 billion for electricity subsidy in 3 months. NEC. Doctor strike. NMA cautions federal government on no work, no pay. And also we have best time for Konkoso to decamp is now that I'm in charge. This is according to the current chairman of the APC, Abdullahi Ganduje. These are the major stories on the Daily Trust newspaper for today.
Okay.
All right, and we'll now take a look at the Nation. We'll take a look at the Nation newspaper now, which says federal government states open talks on minimum wage review. And beneath that, we have a writer that says no plan for 100% pay rise. And above that, we have ECOWAS AU leaders meet over adamant Niger junta. We also have why Obaseki won't back Shaibu as successor. Still on the Nation newspaper, telcos reject government's demand for license to load diesel. Student doctor's death. Lagos sacks official. Makinde unfolds Oyo economic recovery plan. These are the major stories for on the Nation newspaper for this morning. Now let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. And on the Blueprint this morning, we have as ECOWAS 7-day ultimatum expires, sanctions bite hard, Yoruba community in Niger lives in fear. We also have a writer that says, anxiety heightens in northern Nigeria, Tinubu meets governors, GNI, Falana, COP, caution. And beneath that, we have youth corps members won't be deployed to Niamey. This is according to NYSC official. Still on the Blueprint, board chair, Ararume, NNPCL take legal battle to appeal court. And just beneath the masthead, we have Senate confirms ministerial nominees, composes standing committees today. We also have $19.4 million legal fees. Stakeholders, CSOs demand probe, sack of Seplat CEO board. These are the major stories on the Blueprint newspaper for this morning. And then we take a look at the Punch newspaper. On the Punch newspaper, we have foreign airlines repatriate over $4 billion in 15 months. The first rider, Lagos-London fares 45% higher than Accra-London, 162% higher than Cotonou-London. And the second rider, Nigeria Air project stalls, airfares skyrocket over foreign exchange shortage. And we have an infographic to depict all of that. And beneath that, we have private schools will suspend bus services, raise fees. We also have suspecting land grabbers, shoot 3 in Ogun community invasion. And above the masthead, banks shareholders protest as directors borrow 113 billion naira. We also have influx of smuggled textiles, killed 150 local companies. Niger, ECOWAS leaders meet as 7-day ultimatum ends. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper for today. Now we'll take a look at The Guardian. On The Guardian, we have Niger invasion. Nigeria may incur over 2.98 trillion naira, double defense spending yearly. And then we have an illustration there that talks about the sanctions against Niger. And beneath that, we have subsidy, how repair of refineries may ease economic pains. We also have unease over 14 years blackout, power cut in Ondo South. And just beneath the masthead, we have Lagos CP NAPS police, FRSC, LASMA officers at extortion joint. Those are the major stories on The Guardian for today.
Okay, let's take a look at the Daily Sun. The lead story there says confusion, pain in hospitals over strike, and there's a writer attached to that to say patients stranded and frustrated as doctors insist on mass action Wednesday. That story is on page 6, and we have other stories here. Take a look at this one that says Atiku files fresh suit in U.S. against Tinubu over academic records. That story is on page 28. There's an infograph here about Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi and a wife, the 65th birthday Thanksgiving Mass at Catholic Church of the Presentation Ikeja. Okay, that's for the priest there. And then we have Sanwo-Olu and governors Oshoba, Ikenwachukwu, Dele Cole, publishers, editors to attend NG organized Jakonde Lecture Day. That story is on page 6 and the Daily Sun newspaper. Then India-bound couple excretes 184 wraps of cocaine. A woman hides drugs in private part. Things people could do for money, putting their life at risk there. And page 4 has that story. Read further. And then female pastor, 4 others held for kidnapping, possession of arms in Delta. Page 4 has that story. Then Ararume and NPCL take legal battle to appeal court. Page 25 has that story. And then Tinubu meets governors sharing boundaries with Niger. Experts, Catholic bishop warn against military action. We also have another story that says Northeast Group writes Tinubu on appointment of Auditor General, and that's on page 26. Then Serap sues president over failure to publish spending details of 400 billion naira fuel subsidy savings. You can read that on page 29, and that's about the stories we have in the front of the Daily Sun newspaper for today.
Now let's take a look at the Nigerian News Direct. It's still on the Niger coup. It says, Niger coup, anxiety groups Nigerians, businesses over federal government's next course of action. And the first rider says, President must get Senate's approval to deploy military force. Falana. Nigeria risks cutting ties with foreign economic allies, economists. And we have LCCI calls for dialogue on better alternative to promote trade investment. And the last write-off to that story, we have insecurity in northern Nigeria to deepen if federal government goes to war. This is according to Ariwa Group. And we also have beneath that, elevator accident. Sanwo-Olu suspends Lasiama GM, hands over contractors to police. Why we can't afford to increase workers' salaries, Governor Makinde. And we also have federal government targets digital empowerment for 1 million youths. And above the masthead, we have Ogun Tribunal, printing company denies ballot printing scandal, COVID-19 fund embezzlement. These are the major stories on the Nigerian News Direct for today.
Let's move to the Daily Independent, where the lead story boldly captioned says that despite good ratings, experts frown at bloated ministerial list. And it says, say 48 ministers, about 70 other appointees show insensitivity. The other writer says, see cost of governance as impediment to growth of country. That story started on the front page, but you continue reading further. And police begin 24-hour surveillance on second Niger bridge. Page 6 has the story. And then contractors warn Tinubu over selection of unqualified person in BPP. Another story here on Niger coup says customs CG once again compromise at Benin, Cameroon and other borders. Page 6 has the story. And then Lagos sacks facility managers suspends Lasiama GM over death of doctor. Page 7 has that story. Then NIMET predicts 3 days heavy rainfall across most states. To take a look at this report and the states that will be affected, take a look at page 6 in the Daily Independent. And then telcos begin disconnection of underage subscribers and fear revenue dip. And then the last one here, tribunal dismisses PDP's suit seeking to sack Lagos Senator Adebule. Page 7 has that, and that's about the stories in front of the Daily Independent newspaper for today.
All right, now, Margia, maybe we'll just have to talk about some of the stories that made the headlines this morning. And as you can see, most of the newspapers are on Niger Republic, the coup in Niger. And this one is really instructive, the one on News Direct. It says, anxiety grips Nigerians, businesses over federal government's next course of action. It didn't say anxiety grips Nigerians. It says anxiety grips Nigerians. That tells you how much of an impact anything that happens in Niger will be to Nigeria.
Of course, we are going through so much already. The doctors' strike, the high cost of living in the country, and everything that has to do with us. It's, you know, we're just living as it comes, as the day comes, and then having to worry about what the effect of the war in Niger will be for Nigerians. That's another thing that, you know, we keep thinking about. And like it or not, we're affected one way or the other. Just like we've discussed earlier on the show, we have border communities. We have about 7 states in the country who have
that are bordering Niger. And you know, the thing we should all look at is that these border communities, they are not separated by mountains or rivers.
No.
There's nothing like that.
No.
I mean, just...
you could literally walk into the country.
So that is why it's very important that whatever ECOWAS decides, because some of the newspapers are also saying ECOWAS meets to meet. So whatever it is that they decide, they should put all of that into consideration. Because already we have seen people at the border communities saying they are finding it difficult to get basic essentials and all of that, not to talk of the cost. You know, before this, cost of items had gone up, and then this happens, they are not able to get them, and then when they get them, it's at a higher cost. So it's very important that whatever the ECOWAS decides to do, they put all of that into consideration.
So the Nigerians are really hoping that ECOWAS make the right decisions at the end of this meeting. We do not want a meeting that ends in deadlock. So because if it ends in deadlock decision, they cannot afford
a meeting that ends in deadlock, because everybody's now looking to them to see the way forward. Even the coupists in Niger, forget the grandstanding and all of that. I'm sure they are looking forward towards a negotiation of some sort. They are looking towards some kind of talks. I want to believe that's what they are also looking forward to. So a meeting, the ECOWAS meeting, cannot end in deadlock.
And
they must provide the way forward.
How this sanctions method in Niger is affecting Nigerians around the border communities. You know, imagine that you're leaving this day. It's already difficult, and then the next day you're waking up to know that the next food, you're not even sure of the next food.
You're not sure of it, and you can't move around easily.
Exactly.
And then you do not know when the soldiers will come. So you don't know, you know.
You know, sometimes the action starts before the actual news starts.
Of course, look at the tension right now. Look at, and it's because of that. You could see JNI spoke, the governors met with the president, the Senate said no deployment of military. You could see everybody speaking up against it. Experts have talked about it. And I haven't really seen anybody asking for a deployment of military to Niger, apart from the ECOWAS proposal. No other person I've seen say, oh, okay, look at this. I said maybe the West is doing it without actually coming out to say it, you know, but other than that, nobody's actually saying deploy.
Since the 26th of July, when this coup happened, it has been a subject of concern for Nigeria, because they know that this will affect us immensely. And having to hear what's in the front burner, or read what's in the front burner all through Friday to this moment, you know that there's a lot of tension in Nigeria. And we're all hoping that whatever decision they make at the end of the day, it should favor us, favor everybody, and then peace should reign. And let them come to a consensus. What do you want? Come to a table. What do you want? and this problem be solved. At this point in time, we do not need a coup in Africa.
Like the general says, he says it should be a win-win situation, so that, those people need to know what next for them. What are they going to be given? Whatever, are they going to be pardoned? What is it that is going to happen to them, so that, we'll get to the end of this. My dear, on the front page of the Daily Trust, there's this story that says, female soldier kills captain in Adamawa. And the story says that, okay, she was talking to civilians because they were moving at a time during the curfew in Adamawa, and the captain intervened because she told them to go back, and the captain intervened, and that the gun she was holding was already cocked, so she just shot him, and he was rushed to the hospital, but he died. But then when you go into the story, it says that she's known for cocking her gun like that and threatening people and being aggressive. And then the question that came to my mind was, if she was known for that, well, was she not reported? Why was action not taken? What happened? That, she was still allowed to continue the job, and then she was still allowed access to a gun,
So that brings us to how some of these issues are handled internally.
Yeah.
Most times, that is what we get from the military and maybe security agents, agencies as well. When things happen like this, I said, we're handling, there'll be an internal punishment that will be met in that. So if these things continue to happen, what will be the future of Nigeria having such kind of personnel on our roads and even in our communities? It's really wrong. I think that is something that the security agency needs to look into. When you know that somebody has a problem, being aggressive.
Exactly, and then you have access to a gun. Those two things should not work together.
At
being
all.
aggressive and then having access.
No
Margia, before we go, let's talk about the story. Man discovers his wife for 15 years had 2 husbands for 7 years.
Sometimes
usually it's the other way around. A woman discovers that her husband has another wife somewhere, but this one, the man discovered that his wife of 15 years had been married to another man for 7 years within the marriage.
All I can say is there's a lot of things happening in this world that I'm still yet to wrap my head around.
In fact, if you read the story, the man said that when she was pregnant with their second child, as a matter of fact, she was about 2 months pregnant, and she asked him for money to go to a town, and he didn't know that she was going for her introduction to get married to the second man. So she collected transportation fare from him to go get married to another person.
This is the kind of story you hear and they're like, what is going on? But these things happen, and
but don't worry, it didn't happen in Nigeria, so maybe we're not going to see that in Nigeria.
You never can tell. The way people think, you are human at the end of the day. It doesn't matter where you come from. But, a lot of people say that, the culture in Nigeria and everything that we believe in will not make somebody make this kind of mistake. But don't forget that there are people who do this and it's not even reported.
A woman having 2 husbands. All right, that's where we end our show for this morning. Thank you so much for welcoming us into your homes. And if you have missed anything, you can follow us on all our social media platforms. Join us again, same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Iyaji, and do have a wonderful day.